to President Nyerere. I said, this wonderful program you have had, Jama. President Nyerere looked at me and said, don't mind you, Jama is a failure. I said, sir, what do you mean? He said, I learned one lesson. I learned the lesson of how tenaciously an African is attached to his ancestral land. They are strongly attached. What I was trying to do is to pull those little hamlets together. The people will not leave ancestral land where their forebears are buried. I learned a lesson from that. I learned a lesson. Another thing, again, Mogae. I asked him another question. I said, how is your woman one household? Again, he looked at me. He said, don't let anybody see. It's not so. And he looked at me. He said, look at those. It was at the couple. He said, some of them have their daughters 15 years. They have the house. Their sons, because they have to go, they have the house. They have one house for themselves. That you can see how my one house, one man in this is not talk. Again, I learned the lesson. But more important, I learned the lesson of not trying to control price. The best way of dealing with price control. Because if you don't have enough, any effort to control and price will fail. And when I tried it, failed.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. I shall be very brief indeed. What you call them in this digital age, bullets. That will be my answer to bullets. Resources as capital. I agree entirely. In negotiations, you can't go there as if you have nothing on your hands. But that is different from saying that capital is ineffective or unnecessary. In fact, as many of you, at least Tanzanians know, I have said frequently that we had in the Arusha Declaration the four conditions or the four prerequisites for development, which was land, people, good policies, and good leadership. I have said we have forgotten there the element of financial capital. Because you can have all those things, but in order to modernize your economy, you will need some capital with which to get technology, with which to get skills, with which so I agree that in negotiations you must not go blindly or to go with empty hands. You do have assets, and you can use those in negotiations. So I have no problem about that at all. But whether you have negotiating capacity is a big question. And this is where I really have but I'll join this one, the next one, which was what?
Just before you leave that, Mr. President, I think the issue was the poverty mindset. I don't know if you can hear me, but the fact that you both seated at the table already under the impression that you are begging, and yet you are the one with the natural resources. And how do we then counter that?
Well, first, have some self-confidence, for goodness sake. You go to those negotiating tables, you find that on your side you have advisors coming exactly from the side which you are negotiating. How can you operate that? So, anyway, forget it.
Just before you leave that, I think one thing that we can do for ourselves in Africa is to build up a core of negotiation. You have these international corporate bodies. They come in with bags and experienced lawyers, experienced negotiators, and we are facing our officials. And by the time we know where we are, they've I think we need to have core of negotiators, and they must be there for any country that needs them, either through the UNDP, ECA, AU, or even World Bank.
UNDP, World Bank, or some kind of an African institution. I'm not sure. Please, sorry, President Mkapa, we rudely interrupted. Please go ahead.
Okay, fine. What legacy? It's not really for me. It's up to you to decide what legacy I have. Something is a very bad one. Let's see. Let me say what I set out to do. I hope I should remember. First, the question of debt relief. This for me is a terrific legacy because really we were hopelessly indebted. And this one I take my head off to President Obasanjo because he had his debt wiped off in one wave of the hand. But we were very heavily indebted. Everyone in Tanzania here knows we had to reform the economy, the civil service, and everything else in order to get some debt relief and get a foundation now from which to start building a more independent, if you like, economy. That is something that I tried to do. I don't know how well I succeeded. That's up to you to decide. But I would like to think that I made an effort to restore or to entrench the power of the people. One, with regard to their cooperatives, they were in a shambles, and you all know. I tried to do that. Secondly, I tried to restore the voice of the trade unions. We would make them very regularly at the State House to talk about this, the state of the economy, their wages, their claims, and whatnot. Again, it is to entrench or encourage this participatory process, not to think that it's my reserve because I'm president. No. So that was with the trade unions. But more importantly, now, as I said in my introduction, for once I tried deliberately to bring in the private sector as an important change maker in our country, economic change maker. This really I did try. And, meeting them every other 3 months, the chambers of commerce, international ones, and so on. Opening up the mining industry, may have been on bad terms, but there was no mining industry. Yeah. You had state corporations that were doing nothing except earning salaries from the treasury. That's not the way to build a mining economy. But anyway, it's a long story. That's another thing that but I did really try to restore or protect people's power. Development is self-development. Dependence is excessive, and that comes me to on whether we have revisited the Constitution. Dependence really characterizes many of our economies, honestly. And we keep the aid we receive every year is pittance compared to what we are creating ourselves and what we could be creating by way of trading with each other. But we don't talk about that. And the media, I hope, can listen to me. I really hate this glorification of aid. Salvation has come because we have received a grant of $150 million. What kind of nonsense is this? So I hope that I tried to reorient, to understand the basis of development. As Marine used to say, it's the people who think and can perceive what can be done. I started, again, what we learn from others. I learned from Mozambique, the concept of the Tanzania Social Action Fund. Again, entrenching this business, you don't just expect what the government will do. Sometimes you initiate the process where you shame the government into helping you to achieve the results. You define what problems you face and prioritize how you are going to tackle them, and then induce the government to come and help you. I learned that from Malawi, which was much poorer than we are. But I sent a personal assistant there, and then I copied it. Fortunately, after I took place, Mozambique came in to learn from us, ironically. But that's another one of the things. The power of people. The self-reliance, sitting together, what can we do ourselves? I think this is being lost. Have we revisited the independent constitution? Well, they have. In Kenya, they have. We are doing it here now. I think they're doing it all over Africa. It's a realization that perhaps we should try to make the constitutions correspond to the political and economic realities of our time. That's a different matter. Excessive power in the executive, I am really tired. Ironically, although I'm supposed to be very dictatorial. But I do agree that there is excessive power in the executive, absolutely. I believe that we are at the stage of evolution now, where you do need a certain balancing of power. The trouble is there will not be balancing, but there will be rivalry, and it will be a rivalry to the death. This is the trouble. You know, if you look at the criticisms, they are ad hominem, person to person, not issues, not strategy, no. And that is not very conducive. So perhaps that is why you need excessive power in the presidency. I don't know. But I do feel that there is currently a little more power sharing would be helpful. As long as ultimately you know where the buck stops, that for me is important. How prominent is the private sector? I told you how I like to think that this is one of the legacies that I should remember by. The only problem, how strong is it in Tanzania? It is not strong. It is not strong. You have very many, well, not very many, but many CSOs and so on that call themselves economic or something or other, but they are not doing anything other than meeting, seminars, whatnot. That is not the private sector. We're talking much more about how to do business than actually doing business. And that is the problem, as far as I'm concerned. Really, if you are not in Bagamoyo, you are in Morogoro, you are in Arusha, you are in Mont, you are not building the economy. You are just talking about how to fish. No pond, no way. So, I am very unhappy about the still very peripheral role of the private sector in economic policy formulation, in strategy formulation, and in implementation. So much of it is left to the state and their state organs. This is the real problem as far as I can see. One other thing. We will not move very quickly until we have think tanks in Africa that will help these excessive executives, excessive power executives. But independent think tanks, we must, because the world is changing much too fast. The relations between the developed world and our world are changing so fast. But we don't know how much they are changing, what direction they are going to. Who knows what the Trans-Pacific, whatever it is, investment and trade pact, which is being negotiated between America, Australia, Southeast Asia, and so on. What impact will it have on our trade relations? Who is examining it? You know, we've been engaged now with the European Union in negotiations for a new economic partnership. I was glad this morning when I got up, I heard that the African ministers, I think they were meeting in Uganda, have rejected the proposal from the European Union. Because that's what I've been trying to argue the case for. The EPA, yes, they were rejected, absolutely. I said, hooray, they're still home. But you know, what think tank has actually tackled this question of relations between Europe and Africa? Because like it or not, from the slave trade to now, they are our biggest interlocutors or people we are talking to. Where are the think tanks? The slave trade. So I really do, I know Professor Wang is there, he has his research. Yeah, you are struck fully and very friendly. How often? And the few industrialists there are in our country, the few industrialists, how often do they meet with the excessive power moguls, if you like? How often do you meet? So the private sector, no, in my view, they need additional more, making more love. National vision, I think one good thing, and that's why I said I hesitate, because rather than the person, rather than the leader, it's the party. You see, the party in our country, fortunately, was here for so long, it built a national ethic that even when other parties sprang up, you will see them model themselves on the ruling party. You see, that suggests that there is a national ethic and a cultural disposition which is very, well, not uniform, but very national. And that's very, very good. The credit is to the party rather than to any individual leader at the present time or in my own time. I still ask for. And 2 years ago, was it 2 years or last year? You know, I'm waiting so fast. Thank you for the celebration that you You left your hands for me. But I think it was 2 years ago I went to the University of Dar es Salaam. And I said, listen, every year here you have a lecture and a discussion, a whole-day discussion on the state of politics in Tanzania. But I haven't heard of any of the university, Dar es Salaam or any of the new ones, that have held a day of serious discussion about the state of the economy in Tanzania. Why? This excessive obsession with politics and the politics of personality. Why? It's the economy, as Clinton said, damn it. It's the economy, yes. So I really urge that a little more attention should be given to the economy and not on personalities. It would help to move us forward. I have spoken too much and probably excessively, but rather.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. President Mogae, you actually also have the final word today, so Keith, over to you.
Yeah, so in my final way, I agree with everything that regarding negotiations with the investors, whether in any sector, I think we have much better capacity than we used to have. And there is plenty of advice. There are, in fact, a number of African experts in different scattered all over the place. They are there, they are available. Where you need to get them, you can. That's no longer a problem. I don't think so. Even a number of our nationals are now experts in those negotiations. So I don't think it's anything to worry about nowadays. Constitutions, they have evolved, I think, again, as the President has said. And the lady asked about what have we done to implement the visions. Well, yes, in our case, they are reflected in our policies. We even have an institution which monitors implementation by the different sectors of how far they are doing towards the attainment of the targets. The education sector, the agricultural sector, women's sector, so on. And so we are monitoring implementation in there. What do you learn from each other? Well, I learned a lot almost every day from all my colleagues here. One of the things there was tolerance and reconciliation. One of the East African leaders here, who I mentioned by name for a change, is Museveni. I think Museveni is overstaying now. But I learned from him, when he first came to power, it was fashionable for leaders to have an ideology. So he did have some kind of ideology. He did something. He appointed what I considered an over-heavy government, where you have a minister, a deputy minister, a minister of state, and an assistant minister, and then advisors. But I realized that what Museveni was doing, one pretending that he doesn't observe parties and so on, when he said he had a non-party government. What he effectively was doing, he was being accommodated. It's trying to include all sections, whether they were parties or whether they were tribal organizations or traditional organizations, he included them. So I think in that sense, one, for instance, type of a treat is talking about inclusive societies. I think in the first 10 years of this administration, I really take off my head for him. But Obasanjo too, what he did, in different circumstances. So that I looked around and saw that you have to be focused, you have your own vision, and be focused in what you are doing. But nevertheless, allow the possibility that you might be wrong. So that's what I learned from not one person, but different people as we went along. So those are some of the things that I have learned. legacy, but I read what I consider an open society and an open public. I still believe it. Maybe it was indoctrinated by my capitalist teachers somewhere there. I believe in that. And my successor is replacing that. He's deporting foreigners left and right. So maybe it's no legacy at all. But I regret that that is happening. I think it's wrong. I think therefore understanding of our country has declined. We had a very lucky history. We were able to train many of our students, in addition to training them abroad, in other African countries, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana. We even had an arrangement with the Swedish government when we were still eligible for aid in the 70s, called third country training. In other words, the Swedes would give us money, give us scholarships, but these scholarships would be tenable in African countries. So that's what we did. We have our students studying in a number of African countries. Later, of course, also when we discovered that when we send our medical students to Ireland and Britain and the United States, they don't come back, we changed, we send them only to Ghana, Nigeria, and here. And also, we used a lot of refugees. We hired them in substantive positions. South Africans, Zimbabweans, Ugandans, even, and some Kenyans. And so, I think we have been, and for I'm boasting of that for the first time in public, we have been more Pan-Africanist than most of you in our training, in our engagement. I always boast to the Nigerians. I tell them that we had a sound legal system. We used in Nigerian lawyers. That our last president of the Court of Appeal was a Nigerian, the late Abuja. And we had lots of lawyers also from Nigeria and from Ghana. And we followed the rule of law. So they behaved according to ours. Our Court of Appeal, they partly out of necessity, consisted of judges from the regions, from Zimbabwe, from here, and from South Africa, and of course, one or two from Scotland. That's because in Southern Africa we use what is called Roman Dutch law. And therefore, we found the Scottish law lords know something about Roman law. And that's why we put them in our Court of Appeal. And since our Court of Appeal was half foreign, we could not intimidate. So, and we are boastful of that. So, but anyway, the other questions they have answered, so I shouldn't bore you with that. Unless you think I've left something out, I'm willing to answer it. But I think I've answered it.
You certainly wouldn't be boring us, but we've gone way over time. I think it has been invaluable. Thank you so much. Can we give our panelists a huge thank you? Open, honest, passionate. Thank you for sharing your views with us. And as we close today, before the panelists leave, I'd like to just welcome the CEO of Ozi Institute, Professor Joseph Semboja. Please do come up to the podium, take the stand for the vote of thanks. Thank you so much. Give him a round of applause.
Your Excellencies, President Mkapa, President Mogae, President Obasanjo, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizers, I just want to say thank you very much. Our three presidents, for taking your time, share your vast experience with us. This has certainly been a very rare occasion for all of us, a very rare interaction with you. The distinguished participants, all of you without exception, but certainly my very special thanks to our two former Prime Ministers and First Vice Presidents, Honorable Samuel Mareshela and Honorable Cleopa David Nsuya. Thank you for joining us this morning. All of you have made the beginning of our two-day symposium on shared societies and inclusive sustainable development much easier. The tone has been set. Our facilitator, Julie Ichuru, well, there's always time to learn. Thank you very much for a job very well done. And of course, the media, thank you very much for being with us and for your support. So once again, I say thank you and have a good day.
Can we please be upstanding as the President speaks their way out? Thank you so much.